Tears streamed down Elise's face as Marcus held her hand across the mahogany desk that once symbolized the distance between them. I spent 15 years building this company, thinking success would fill the emptiness. But it took hiring you, just for one day, to realize what I've been missing all along. If you're wondering how a high-powered CEO and a struggling single father bridged worlds to find each other, stay with me through this incredible journey of fate, courage, and love against all odds. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more life-changing stories that remind us how love appears in the most unexpected places. Elise Morgan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching Seattle's skyline glitter through the morning rain. At 38, she had everything society said she should want: founder and CEO of Urban Core Technologies, a sustainable building materials company valued at over $300 million. Forbes had featured her last month. She had the penthouse, the wardrobe, the influence. Yet each night, she returned to an empty home, the silence broken only by the occasional call from her worried mother wondering when she'd make time for a real life. The company retreat was in 3 days, and her assistant had just quit. The timing couldn't have been worse, with investors flying in and a major announcement planned. Elise needed someone, anyone, competent enough to help her prepare the presentation materials and coordinate logistics. Just for one day, maybe 2. Her HR director suggested a temporary staffing agency, and Elise agreed without much thought. She just needed a warm body who could follow instructions. Miles away, in a modest apartment in Rainier Valley, Marcus Wilson was already on his second cup of coffee. At 5:30 in the morning, he moved quietly, careful not to wake 7-year-old Zoe. Her bedroom door was decorated with her artwork, bright, hopeful creations that kept him going on the hardest days. Since losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, Marcus had been working multiple jobs to stay afloat. His degree in business administration meant little when potential employers saw gaps in his resume from when he'd stepped back to care for his wife and then his daughter. "Daddy?" Zoe appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her curly hair wild around her face. "Hey, sunshine," Marcus smiled, pulling her into a hug. "Did I wake you?" She shook her head against his chest. "Are you working at the new place today?" "Yes, just for today. Ms. Peters will pick you up from school, and I'll be home for dinner. Promise." He kissed the top of her head, ignoring the knot of anxiety in his stomach. The temp agency had called last night, a one-day administrative position at some downtown company. The pay was good, better than his usual gigs, but it was just another stopgap. Nothing that would change their lives. The Urban Core building was intimidating, all steel and glass and purpose. Marcus adjusted his tie, wishing he'd had time to get his suit properly tailored instead of relying on the second-hand find that was slightly too large in the shoulders. The security guard eyed him skeptically until he explained he was reporting to HR for a temporary assignment. The elevator ride to the 22nd floor gave him time to rehearse his introduction: professional, capable, grateful but not desperate. Elise was in the middle of a heated phone call when Marcus was escorted into her office. She held up one finger without looking at him, continuing to explain in clipped tones why the proposed contract terms were unacceptable. Marcus took the moment to observe the meticulous office, the wall of awards, and the woman herself. She wasn't what he'd expected from a CEO. Younger than he'd imagined, with natural makeup and a simple blazer over a blouse and tailored pants. No power suits or excessive jewelry. Just confidence that radiated from her posture. "Sorry about that," she said, finally setting down her phone. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, something unreadable passed across her face. "You must be from the agency." "I'm Elise Morgan." "Marcus Wilson." He stepped forward, hand extended. "Pleasure to meet you, Ms. Morgan." Her handshake was firm, businesslike. "I'll be direct, Mr. Wilson. I need someone who can work independently, solve problems without constant guidance, and handle confidential information professionally. My assistant left unexpectedly, and I have a company retreat to prepare for. Can you handle that? There was a challenge in her tone, an assumption that perhaps he couldn't. Marcus had faced that tone before, in countless interviews where his qualifications were questioned despite being on paper. I have a business administration degree from Washington State, 5 years of executive support experience before I took time off for family reasons, and I'm exceptionally good at anticipating needs before they're voiced. He kept his tone even, professional. I understand this is just a one-day position, but I'll treat it with the same dedication as if it were permanent. Something shifted in her expression, surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. Good. Let's get started then. The morning passed in a whirlwind of tasks. Elise's expectations were high, her instructions sometimes vague, requiring Marcus to read between the lines. But he found a rhythm, organizing her chaotic notes into coherent presentations, fielding calls with a professional ease that seemed to surprise her, and even suggesting a more efficient way to structure her investor meeting. By lunch, Elise found herself watching him as he worked at the small desk in the corner of her office. There was something different about how he approached problems, thoughtful, thorough, but also creative. When he caught her looking, she quickly glanced away, embarrassed. I typically work through lunch, she said, gesturing to the salad her previous assistant would have already ordered for her. But feel free to take a break. Marcus nodded, but didn't move. I noticed you have dietary restrictions noted in your calendar. I took the liberty of ordering your usual salad, but also asked them to include the dressing on the side since the note mentioned you prefer it that way. The salad arrived minutes later, exactly as she liked it. A small thing, but it caught her off guard. Her last assistant had never quite gotten it right, despite months of reminders. Thank you, she said, and meant it. They ate in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Marcus occasionally checked his phone, a small smile touching his lips at whatever he saw there. Children? Elise asked, surprising herself with the personal question. Marcus looked up, that same warm smile lingering. My daughter, Zoe. She's 7. Her teacher sends updates throughout the day. He hesitated, then turned his phone to show Elise a photo of a beaming little girl with bright eyes and her father's smile, proudly holding up an art project. She's beautiful, Elise said softly. She's my everything. The simplicity and depth of his statement hung in the air between them. Elise nodded, then turned back to her computer, suddenly aware of the personal line they just crossed. We should continue with the retreat preparations. As the afternoon progressed, Elise found herself increasingly impressed by Marcus's efficiency and insight. When a crisis emerged, the retreat venue calling to say they'd double-booked and couldn't honor Urban Core's reservation, Marcus handled it with remarkable composure, finding an even better location within an hour and negotiating terms that actually saved the company money. How did you manage that? Elise asked, genuinely impressed. Marcus shrugged, but there was pride in his eyes. I used to handle logistics for conferences at my previous company. Sometimes a problem is actually an opportunity in disguise. It was such a simple statement, but something about it resonated with Elise. When was the last time she'd seen problems as anything but obstacles to overcome? By 6 o'clock, they had accomplished what would normally take days. The retreat materials were prepared, the crisis averted, and Elise's week looked suddenly manageable. She should have been relieved to be wrapping up, to send this temporary help on his way. Instead, she felt an odd reluctance as Marcus began gathering his things. You've been incredibly helpful today, Mr. Wilson, she said formally, reaching for her checkbook. I'd like to add a bonus to your agency's payment for exceeding expectations. Marcus paused. That's very generous, but not necessary. I was just doing my job. Doing it exceptionally well, she corrected. Most temps wouldn't have shown that level of initiative or problem solving. The agency clearly undervalued your skills. A shadow passed over his face. The agency was the only place that would hire me, actually. Single dad with a gap in employment history doesn't exactly scream reliable to most employers. The comment hung between them, honest and raw. Elise felt something twist inside her, recognition, perhaps. How many times had she been judged for being unmarried, childless, too focused on her career? Their loss, she said finally. And my temporary gain, it seems. Marcus smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Morgan. I wish you success with your retreat. He turned to leave, and Elise felt words rising in her throat, unexpected and unplanned. Mr. Wilson, Marcus. Would you consider coming back tomorrow? There's still quite a bit to do, and your help has been invaluable. The surprise on his face mirrored her own internal shock at the request. This wasn't like her, extending temporary assignments, breaking her own rules about professional distance. I would need to check with my daughter's after-school program, he said carefully. Of course. We could adjust the hours if needed. Was she really negotiating with a temp? The pay would be the same, naturally. Marcus considered for a moment, then nodded. In that case, yes. I'd be happy to return tomorrow. After he left, Elise sat alone in her office, puzzled by her own actions. It was just practicality, she told herself. He was competent, and she needed help. That was all. But as she drove home that night, she found herself thinking not about the retreat or the investors, but about the way Marcus's eyes crinkled when he smiled at his daughter's photo. The next morning brought a different energy. Marcus arrived with coffee for both of them. I noticed you prefer the dark roast from the cafe downstairs, and a more relaxed demeanor. Elise, too, felt less rigid, greeting him with a genuine smile that surprised even herself. They fell into an easy working rhythm, more collaborative than the day before. Elise found herself asking his opinion on the retreat agenda, on her presentation points, even on a difficult personnel issue she was navigating with a department head. You have good instincts, she remarked during a break. Have you considered returning to a full-time executive role? The question dimmed his smile slightly. Constantly. But finding something that allows me to be there for Zoe has been challenging. After my wife died, I promised myself I'd never miss the important moments. Elise nodded, understanding flooding her. How different their lives were. She had sacrificed personal connections for professional success, while he had done the opposite. Yet somehow, they'd ended up in the same place, both missing something. I admire that, she said quietly. Knowing your priorities so clearly. Marcus looked at her curiously. What about you? What are your priorities beyond Urban Core's success? The question caught her off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked her about herself, not her company? I suppose I've been so focused on building something meaningful that I haven't given much thought to what comes after. After success, he asked. After achievement, she clarified. There's always another goal, another milestone. I'm not sure I know how to define fulfillment beyond that. The conversation was interrupted by a call, but the words lingered between them. Throughout the day, Elise found herself more and more drawn to Marcus's perspective, his approach to problems, his occasional mentions of Zoe that lit up his entire face. He was so different from the ambitious, often cutthroat people who typically surrounded her. When evening approached, Elise made another impulsive decision. The retreat starts tomorrow. I could use an assistant on site for the 3 days. The agency rate for you, plus expenses, of course. She tried to keep her tone businesslike, as though this weren't completely outside her normal operating procedure. Marcus hesitated. Zoe has school. I couldn't possibly. Children are welcome, Elise said quickly. It's at Snoqualmie Lodge. Many executives bring their families. There's even a kids program. She was stretching the truth. Children were allowed but rarely attended. Still, the company had family-friendly policies on paper, even if few ever used them. The hope that flashed across Marcus's face made her heart skip. "Are you sure? I wouldn't want to appear unprofessional." "I'm the CEO," Elise said with a small smile. "I define what's professional at Urban Core." And so, against all workplace norms and Elise's own carefully constructed boundaries, Marcus and Zoe joined the company retreat. Watching the little girl's excitement at the lodge's grand entrance, the way her eyes widened at the mountain views, Elise felt something shift inside her. When was the last time she had seen the world through eyes of wonder rather than assessment? The retreat participants, mostly executives and senior managers, were visibly surprised by the presence of Elise's new assistant and his daughter. She could see the questions in their eyes, the raised eyebrows, the whispered conversations. For the first time in her career, Elise found herself not caring what they thought. Zoe quickly became the unofficial mascot of the retreat, her infectious enthusiasm and innocent questions breaking through the corporate formality. Even the most serious board members couldn't help smiling when she solemnly offered them cookies from the buffet or asked detailed questions about the company's sustainability initiatives that she'd apparently memorized from her father's notes. Marcus proved invaluable during the business sessions, anticipating Elise's needs, smoothly handling logistics, and offering insightful suggestions when asked. But it was during the evenings, after the formal programs ended, that the real shift happened. The three of them took a walk along the lodge's nature trail, Zoe running ahead to examine interesting rocks and leaves while Elise and Marcus talked. Really talked, in a way Elise couldn't remember doing with anyone in years. About their dreams beyond work, about loss, his wife, her parents' divorce, about what they hoped for in the future. "Sometimes I worry I'm not enough for her," Marcus confessed, watching Zoe balance on a fallen log. "That she needs a mother figure, more stability than I can provide on my own." Elise surprised herself by reaching for his hand. "From what I've seen, you're everything she needs. She's confident, curious, kind, those aren't accidents." The touch lingered between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. On the final night of the retreat, after Zoe had fallen asleep in the adjoining room of their suite, Marcus and Elise sat on the balcony, watching the stars emerge above the mountain peaks. The successful conclusion of the business portions had left Elise feeling strangely hollow, knowing that tomorrow they would return to Seattle, to normal life. "What happens next?" Marcus asked softly, voicing the question she'd been avoiding. Elise looked at him, this man who had entered her life so unexpectedly just days ago. "I don't know," she admitted. "This isn't. I don't usually blur the lines between professional and personal," he finished for her, a small smile playing at his lips. She nodded, grateful for his understanding. "Neither do I," he said. "But sometimes life doesn't fit into the compartments we try to create for it." In the moonlight, with the mountains surrounding them and the weight of expectations temporarily lifted, Elise took another risk. She leaned forward and kissed him, gently, a question more than a statement. Marcus answered, his hand coming up to cradle her face with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they separated, both were breathing unevenly, surprised by the intensity of what had passed between them. "This complicates things," she whispered. "Life is complicated," he replied simply. The return to Seattle brought reality crashing back. The temp agency was confused by Elise's request to extend Marcus's assignment indefinitely. Her executive team raised eyebrows at the continued presence of this new assistant, who seemed to have the CEO's ear in unprecedented ways. And Marcus himself struggled with the ambiguous nature of their relationship. Was he an employee? Something more? How could he explain to Zoe what was happening between him and Ms. Morgan? The breaking point came 3 weeks after the retreat. A photo of Elise, Marcus, and Zoe at a company picnic appeared on a local business blog, with speculation about the CEO's new family and questions about the appropriateness of hiring a boyfriend in an undefined role. Elise was furious at the invasion of privacy, but Marcus was devastated, worried about how it would affect Zoe and his already complicated employment prospects if things didn't work out with Elise. "I can't do this," he told her in the privacy of her office, the hurt evident in his voice. I can't be your employee and, whatever else we're becoming. It's not fair to either of us, and it's certainly not fair to Zoe. Are you quitting? Elise asked, fear making her voice sharper than intended. I'm asking for clarity, he corrected gently. I've spent 3 years trying to rebuild my life, create stability for my daughter. I can't base that foundation on something undefined. The words hit Elise like a physical blow. She had been so caught up in the novelty of their connection, the way he made her feel, that she hadn't considered the implications for him, a single father with much more to lose. I need time, she said finally. This isn't something I ever planned for. Marcus nodded, his expression carefully neutral. I understand. But Zoe and I need certainty more than we need temporary happiness. He left that afternoon, a formal resignation letter on her desk, and Elise felt his absence like a physical pain. The office seemed colder, her achievements hollow. For 3 days, she buried herself in work, ignoring the concerned glances from her team, the empty desk where Marcus had sat, the silence where Zoe's occasional visits had brought laughter. On the 4th day, Elise's oldest friend and company co-founder, Diane, stormed into her office unannounced. Enough, she declared, closing the door firmly behind her. What the hell are you doing? Running my company, Elise replied coldly. Hiding, Diane corrected. I've known you for 20 years, Elise. I've watched you sacrifice everything personal on the altar of this company. And the one time, something real finds you, you retreat back into your safe corporate shell. It's complicated, Elise protested. Life is complicated, Diane shot back, unknowingly echoing Marcus's words from the retreat. Do you know what I would give to find someone who looks at me the way that man looks at you? Who challenges you, supports you, makes you laugh. Someone whose child brings out a side of you I haven't seen since college. Elise stood abruptly, walking to the window to hide the tears threatening to fall. What if I'm not cut out for it? Being part of a family? I've been alone for so long. Diane's voice softened. Honey, you built a $300 million company from nothing. You can figure out how to love a man and his daughter. The simplicity of the statement broke something open inside Elise. Love. Was that what this was? This ache in her chest, this constant thought of them, this fear of loss? That evening, Elise found herself driving to the address she'd memorized from Marcus's employment file. The apartment building was modest but well-maintained, flowers planted along the walkways. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, gathering courage, before finally walking to Unit 207 and knocking. Zoe answered, her eyes widening in recognition. Ms. Morgan. Dad. Ms. Morgan is here. Marcus appeared behind his daughter, surprise evident on his face. Elise. What are you? I reorganized the company structure today, she blurted out, then winced at her own corporate approach. I created a new position. Chief Community Impact Officer. It reports directly to the board, not to me. It would involve overseeing our foundation work, community engagement, sustainability partnerships. Things you're good at. Things that could make a difference. Marcus looked confused. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a career, she clarified. With flexible hours, the ability to work from home when Zoe needs you, and no direct reporting relationship to me. Because I'd like to see if we might. If you could be my dad's girlfriend? Zoe supplied helpfully, earning a choked laugh from both adults. Something like that, Elise admitted, her eyes never leaving Marcus's face. I don't know how to do this. Any of it. But I know that when you left, you took something with you that I don't want to live without. Marcus stepped forward, hope warring with caution in his expression. Are you sure? Your company, your reputation, are meaningless if I'm too afraid to live, she finished. I've built something successful. Now I want to build something meaningful. If you'll help me. The smile that broke across his face was worth every moment of uncertainty, every risk. We'll help, he said, reaching for her hand as Zoe bounced excitedly beside them. But on one condition. Name it, Elise said, finally allowing herself to step into his embrace. No more one-day assignments, he whispered against her hair. I'm looking for something permanent. 1 year later, Elise stood at those same floor-to-ceiling windows in her office, but this time she wasn't alone. Marcus's arms encircled her waist as they watched Zoe charming the office staff in the conference room, where a small celebration was underway for Urban Corps' newest initiative, a scholarship program for single parents returning to the workforce. Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up when you hired me that day? Marcus asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Elise leaned back against him, the engagement ring on her finger catching the afternoon sunlight. Never. I thought I was just solving a short-term problem. Instead, you found a long-term solution, he teased. She turned in his arms, suddenly serious. No. I found a partner. Someone who sees me, not just my success. Someone who challenged me to build something beyond a company. A family, he said softly. A family, she agreed, as Zoe waved at them through the glass, her smile bridging the worlds they had once thought could never connect. Sometimes, the most unexpected one-day assignment can turn into a lifetime commitment. All it takes is the courage to see beyond the surface, to recognize that what we're missing might be standing right in front of us, waiting for us to be brave enough to reach out and grasp it with both hands. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more tales of unexpected love, second chances, and the courage to break down walls we build around ourselves. Remember, sometimes the partner you've been missing has been waiting for you all along, perhaps just a single day away from changing your life forever.